So pleasant good afternoon to each and every one. Members of the media, thank you for taking the time out to be here at the minorities press conference this afternoon. Let me take the opportunity also to wish all citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, hope you had a very productive Independence Day. Of course, it was not the usual independence we are accustomed to with our parade and then culminating with, of course, the fireworks, but albeit we were able to celebrate this country's 63rd independence. And of course, you know, independence is something that we all as citizens should be extremely proud about. Our forefathers, our founding fathers, Dr. Eric Williams, and the others would have fought extremely hard to ensure that we can stand here today, a proud nation, 63 years old. And while you may see some try to rewrite the history and the facts remain clear that Dr. Eric Williams was and indeed the first Prime Minister of the Republic of this Twin Island state, Trinidad and Tobago. Fellow Tobagonians, today I call you here to speak to you on two matters, and one I will begin by sharing with you what could have been a dual lane, world-class, first-class, dual carriageway all the way from Cano Bay directly down to the brand new modern A&R International Airport. And therefore I want to share with you the plans of the previous PNM administration that was derailed by this current THA administration led by Farley Augustine. So I want to share with you the plan. So the PNM had a plan and they built out a modern international airport. And to complement that airport, there was also a plan to build a very modern dual carriageway, dual meaning 2 lanes on either side of the road with an international first-class, world-class boulevard. So So, ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed there was a design concept for a dual carriageway that would have taken you, the passenger, trying to get to the brand new A&R International facility from Canopy all the way down through the comfort of 2 lanes to the airport. That plan and that project, as I indicated, was estimated to cost you, the taxpayer, $140 million. But for you Tobagonians and persons who depend on the THA and would hear the THA consistently saying that they are strapped for funds, what was interesting about this project is that this project would have been totally funded by the central government, so it would have allowed the THA to focus on other development projects. However, what we ended up with was the complete opposite. You would recall sometime in 2022, the THA, under the guise of emergency roads and having the need to build roads for the Tobago October Carnival, came to us and told us they had to absolutely build 4 roads. One of these roads being that Shervan to Storby local connector road. The carnival came, the carnival went, and the roads were not built. However, for some reason, this THA, which they still cannot yet properly explain, this THA decided to continue pursuing the construction of this road. And I would share with you some details perhaps you may not have known before now. This very road was awarded to a company called Namalco. And I want you all to understand how award of contracts for multi-million-dollar roads are supposed to happen. It's supposed to happen. This supposed to go through a tender process, a public tender process. Yet, when you ask the question to the THA, up to this day, the secretary, Mr. Trevor James, the chief secretary, Mr. Farley Augustine, neither of them can explain to you, Tobagonian and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, how this company, Namalco, came into having sole selected and awarded this contract. And what is even more curious about this arrangement, having been gifted this contract, Namalco, for some reason, decided that they were no longer interested in this very lucrative contract. And today I pose the question again to the Chief Secretary and to the Secretary of the Division of Infrastructure, Mr. Trevor James. This road that is this Shervan Storby local connector road, how did Namalco become, how this road was awarded to Namalco? Under what circumstances was this road awarded to Namalco? Did they bid for this road? Did they submit a request for proposal? How did Namalco even come into knowing that you were going to construct this road? And this question is a question that we all as Tobagonians must ensure is answered, because up to this day, this administration has not told us how did Namalco, how was this road awarded to Namalco? What was the tender process? And how did they even get to find out about this company called Namalco to award them this road? And why did Namalco give up the contract, especially if it was above board? Why did Namalco eventually refuse to pursue this project? But more than that, it got even more curious and even more concerning, because after Namalco gave up that project, we then got a press release that came out on the 16th of May 2023. And that press release that came out on 2023 told us some very interesting information. It said in approximately 120 days, were you told to take note of that, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. On the 16th of May 2023, we were told that in 3 months' time, in 4 months' time, 120 days, the Shervans-Torbay local road connector is likely to be commissioned for use by the motoring public and pedestrians. So that was May 2023. Today we are at the 1st of September 2025. And that very Shervans-Torbay local road connector still remains incomplete. At that time, they told us the cost of that road would be approximately $65 million and $83,187.19. I am asking the Chief Secretary today, 2 years later, what is the cost of that Shervans-Torbay local connector road that was estimated to cost at the time, 16th May 2023, $65 million. What is the cost now? And you would recognize, as I go through, this road was marred in procurement irregularities and legal red flags. As I mentioned to you, that award to Namalco continues to be a secret. No one has to this date explained the procurement process. Of course, we know about the legal challenges, and you would hear them wanting to put the PNM's name in their challenges and the issues they face with that road. But I would ask the Chief Secretary simply, the land that you all trespassed upon, is that person a PNM? Or is that PNM's land? Or did the PNM tell the Secretary to decide to design a road that passes through private lands to which you did not have the requisite approval? Did the PNM cause your reckless approach to road construction? You would hear them talk about the EMA, and it is the PNM who caused the EMA to stop the project. But again, I would simply ask the Chief Secretary, so is the PNM cause you and the Secretary of Infrastructure to start a road without the requisite EMA approval? Did the PNM encourage you all to break the law? And therefore, brothers and sisters, you would see along the way, at every juncture, this project was marred with illegal infractions and regulatory breaches. Because you had this situation, one with EMA, and that created additional costs. The last time I checked, based on the response in the Assembly Legislature, that legal challenge by itself cost you, the taxpayer, over $3 million. And I would read for you from a news report regarding that private lands, because no one knew at the time that the THA was embarking on a project to which some of the lands it did not own. And apparently this family, the Rampersad family, Savitri and Shastri Rampersad, took the THA to court. And again, the court awarded that family an injunction, and for quite some time, that road remained incomplete due to that injunction. Recently, we have seen work started back apace, and it is my information that it should be completed within the next week or so. But up to this point, what we know is that the Rampasads, they had a claim in court for compensation of over $35 million. And now that it appears that this matter has been settled, it is reasonable to assume that that $35 million has been paid. And if that $35 million has not been paid, I am calling on the Chief Secretary to declare, to come to the people, come clean, and tell us what was the value of the settlement paid to the Rampasad family for the encroachment on their private lands. What was the sum you all paid? And if we are to accept that they paid around $35 million, and we are also to accept that the THA also incurred a legal fee of over $3 million, if you add that to the $65 million, it would mean that the project has already escalated from $65 million to over $105 million. So a project which started off single lane highway, moving from what you were going to get dual lane highway, one where the central government was going to incur all the costs, your THA has now burdened you, the Tobagonian, with a bill of over $105 million. And what is even worse is when you compare what you were getting for the dual highway, which was an entire boulevard with culverts and walking lanes and all of that, and proper drainage, etc., and was going for about 3.1 kilometers, costing you about $140 million, a less inferior highway or roadway, I wouldn't even call it a highway, a roadway, one lane with barely any culverts, any sidewalks, improper drainage, is now costing you over 105 going on $110 million, because there's also variation for the downtime to the contractor. And if we are to assume that that would also cost about another $15 or so million, then that project, by my estimation, could now cost over $120 million. So this is how you get a clear picture of when you have bad governance, poor leadership, how it could cost you, the taxpayer, especially you here in Tobago, because you had a situation where you would have benefited from a two-lane highway going all the way down to the airport at no cost to the THA, because the central government was going to bear the brunt of that cost, was going to take on the cost of that project for $140 million. And now this THA, through their very clandestine and surreptitious and even suspicious transaction, has now burdened you with a bill of over $120 million. So I'm calling on the Chief Secretary to come clean with every Tobagonian on what is the real cost of this project to date. What is it? How much money was paid to this family for encroaching on their private lands? How much money has been paid overall in legal fees to date? And what is the additional payments to the contractor that you all would have handpicked? These are the very important questions, because I know very soon the road will open. And we all perhaps may forget that that road that you are driving on, that should have costed you just under $65 million, is now a road that has doubled in cost. And we have to ask ourselves, who is benefiting from that inflated cost? Because when you look at the bill of quantities, this is very concerning to me. The Chief Secretary said previously that paying $1,400 per ton to pave road is corrupt. He described Tobago paving contractors as corrupt for payments they receive for 1,400 tons to pave the roads. But would you believe that under this arrangement, this contractor, and I want to read the bill of quantities, is being paid $2,700 per ton to pave these roads under the very same conditions. So in one breath, the Chief Secretary is saying $1,400 per ton is corrupt, but in the same breath, he has turned around and he's paying this contractor over $2,700 per ton, which is double the amount. And we all have to ask ourselves, who is benefiting from these inflated costs? And why would you inflate costs in a situation where you are telling Tobagonians that you just don't have money to hire them for work? Look how many parents right now can't buy books, can't get a grant. Look how many people you're sent home fired. Imagine even when the industrial court ruled and say pay the people you sent them home improperly. You refuse to pay these people, but yet you have a contractor paying them $2,700 per ton, which is double the price of the standard payment price of paving, which is about $1,200 to $1,400 per ton. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am calling not only on the Chief Secretary, because this matter has been reported before, and I'm therefore calling on the Office of the Procurement Regulator to state what is the status of the investigation, of the evidence and the information we have provided with respect to these roads. What is the status of how this company, California Stucco, came into being awarded a single lane contract when the RFP that went out for public tendering was for a dual lane contract? Was this a separate arrangement? Did they all of a sudden decided to cancel the dual lane arrangement procurement process and then award sole select? We are still clueless as to how they arrive at that contract, and therefore the OPR has a responsibility under the Public Procurement Act to state whether this contract was awarded properly. So there's so much to dissect under this one road. You have the issues of inflated costs. You have the issues of improper award of contract. And then you have the issues of basically breaching public laws, trespassing laws by encroaching on private lands, EMA Act by starting a road construction without even having the necessary approval. This project is a project which I will basically deem highway robbery. This is highway robbery to the highest extent. And we as Tobagonians must ensure that there's accountability and someone is held accountable when it comes to this Tobago local road connector. Because it is not by accident. It started off as an emergency project in 2022. Yet the contract was awarded in 2023. And to date, 2 years later, that project remains incomplete. And further, the Chief Secretary promised that this was a design-build finance contract, and to simplify it, meaning that the contractor would come with all the money, they would build the highway, and then after 9 months, they would receive a first payment, and then 18 months later, they would receive their final payment. But for some reason, in the dead, just the night before the New Year's, on All Year's evening, this Chief Secretary and this corrupt administration decided to alter the contract and pay this contractor $34 million before the project itself has even been finished. So the project remains incomplete, but the contractor now receives payment in advance when we were given the assurance by the Chief Secretary, the commitment, given his word, that no payments will be made until the project is totally completed. So here it is. Can we trust someone like that? A man who would have given such a blanket commitment, very forceful, and on multiple occasions when we were trying to find out why you chose a Trinidad contractor over a Tobago contractor, his reasoning was, well, the Trinidad contractor have the money to do it. The Tobago contractor can't do this project and wait on the payment, so we had to go with somebody who had the money and can wait. But even after telling us that it was the reason, you turn around and breach the contractual arrangement and pay them advance payments when that was not the arrangement. And therefore you can see, you can draw your own conclusions. Somebody has some interest in this that is beyond simply getting the road completed. Because you have a situation where they ensure the cost was inflated, so you know the profits is such that it have enough to share around. And you have to ask the question, who would have benefited? Who would have benefited? The final matter, because I don't want to keep you all too much today, is with respect to the airport itself. And you would recall that the airport was practically commissioned sometime, I think, in March. All right, and you all remember the commitments that were given by not just the ministers there present, but also the technical people that basically the practical completion meant that most of the as-built works were done, and it was just some fine touches to be completed before you and I would have the privilege of traveling to and from Tobago in a modern international airport terminal. Of course, we were told sometime around July that would have happened. July has since come and gone. Of course, we know between that time we would have changed administrations as well. The PNM administration was voted out, and in came the UNC TPP administration. And I purposefully put the TPP with the UNC because that is where they are seating. They are seating with their UNC friends. And what is curious about this arrangement is that since that time to now, none of the ministers, no government minister, no THA official can tell us when will we have the luxury, when will we have the privilege of traveling both domestic and international through those brand new modern international terminal. You have the ministers saying they don't know. Then you have the chief secretary all of a sudden. He turned dumb dog in Jerusalem. He had the most mouth for Dr. Rowley and the PNM every day. And you could imagine, let us be fair, had this been the PNM that was still in office, and had the PNM not met the deadline of July 2023, you could have imagined our chief secretary and the words he would have had for that central government. You could have imagined how much noise he would have been making for them to open that airport and open it now. And I'm simply asking the chief secretary, where's that energy? Where's that energy? How come you're not moved? You're not interested in ensuring that that very important piece of our puzzle towards building back our vibrant tourism is available for use? You don't want that airport open so that you can leverage it to all the airlines to let them know that you have a safe landing, you have areas for VIP, etc., and your guests can have comfort in traveling. And we need that now. We have October Carnival coming up. How come they are not pushing their friends in Trinidad to have that terminal open that was promised since July? Where's the Chief Secretary's voice in all of this? So since the Chief Secretary has lost his voice, I as minority leader is saying to the sitting government, you asked for the opportunity to govern. You asked for the opportunity to run this country, both Trinidad and Tobago. The people responded and gave you the opportunity to run this country. And part of running this country is ensuring that that airport is open. We gave you the country. You can't run it. Because if after you are in government now since April, we are in September, that airport was to be open in July. And up to this day, no one can tell us as a matter of timelines, when will this airport open for public use? That's the question to the Honorable Prime Minister, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. When will the people of Tobago get to utilize this airport? And we want a date and time. The carnival is right around the corner. It will be a privilege. It will be a perfect opportunity for us to have our foreigners coming through that terminal so that they can go and spread the good news. They say good news and word of mouth spreads and is the best form of marketing. And if people are able to come through that terminal and have that experience in October, it augurs well for us marketing the destination going forward. And therefore, I am urging the government, as your minority leader, to ensure they give this airport the priority that it requires so that it can be open by October. Because had it been the PNM, I know for a fact you would have heard the Secretary of Tourism on the backs of the ministers and the Prime Minister, and no doubt this Chief Secretary. And could this be something clandestine? Because, you know, I am wondering out loud, could this be deliberate? Could this be an election ploy? Because as we all know, the THA election is right around the corner. In fact, it could be days, but mere weeks, and I dare say perhaps couple months, but can't be longer. And therefore, could it be that they are purposefully delaying the opening of that terminal as not to allow the PNM to take the rightful credit it deserves for investing in Tobago's tourism? Because what reason, again, would there be? I see the Chief Secretary talking about the road, and I just explained to you, Tobagonians, what happened with that road. The THA had the opportunity to collaborate with the central government and ensure that a modern dual highway was built all the way from Cove down to the airport, and they just decided to build their own road. But for some reason, like the Chief Secretary, like he had amnesia or something, is now saying, well, asking the very government that he refused to collaborate with, but where the road that you promised we? And I'm asking myself, about Chief Secretary, where you were living for the last 3 years? It's you who denied the people them from building the road. You said you are man a yard under Schedule 5. This is my responsibility. So how you could turn around after blocking them from building the road, turn around and ask them, but where the road you say was going to build? So, brothers and sisters, they continue to play smart with foolishness. And as I mentioned, we are about very close to an election. And I want to talk to the public servants especially. Because, you know, this administration recognized, like all of Tobago, all Tobagonians, that they have failed to deliver. You walk, whether it be the roads are in a mess. You look at just maintenance of buildings in a mess. You look at just development of our infrastructure, whether it be playing fields, whether it be the hospitals. They can't even operationalize Roxborough Hospital after 3 years. The PNM gave them that hospital as built, ready. And up to this day, this hospital remains not fully operationalized. So they have failed by all measure. And now that they have failed with an election looming, couple weeks, perhaps months away, they will be frantically rushing to do things. And in rushing to do things, I know they will come to you, the public servants, to breach both procurement regulations. They will come to you to do all kinds of things that are not in keeping with the public service regulations. I'm simply saying, cover yourself. CYA. Cover yourself, because at this point, I draw your attention to a media release from a company called Tobago Urban. Just getting the name of the company here. Right. I draw your attention to a company called Tobago Urban Rural Housing Corporation Limited. And this company has a tender out with a deadline Friday, 18th July 2025. And so the company's name is Tobago Urban and Rural Housing Corporation Limited. It says the Tobago Urban and Rural Housing Corporation, and here it gets interesting, an agency of the Tobago House of Assembly requests proposals for design build finance services for the Adelphi Residential Infrastructure Development Project, lot development at Mason Hall, Tobago. And it gives a deadline of Monday, 7th July to Friday, 18th July, and to submit your proposals. It is my information that this company is also the company engaged in awarding public-private partnership contracts to developers, housing developers, to build homes in Tobago using THA lands. I have sought legal advice on this matter, whether this agency is so empowered by law to act on behalf of the THA and dispose of public assets in the way as I just read and in the way they have proposed, including entering into financing arrangements through private-public partnerships. And based on the advice I've received, it says to me, 1, the disposals of lands owned by the Tobago House of Assembly and private partnership arrangements using resources that under the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the Public Procurement Act, and Disposal of Public Procurement Act and the Land Acquisition Act make one thing clear. No division or agency of the THA can unilaterally dispose of THA lands without the proper statutory approvals, gazetting, and oversight by the central government. It says public assets must be managed transparently, lawfully, and with public notice and procurement safeguards. And it also, what was also instructive is the recently upheld judgment at the Privy Council regarding the Milshuv matter, where in essence, the court ruled that the THA cannot enter into private financing or bolt arrangements using public funds without the express approval of the Minister of Finance and the Cabinet, because these arrangements create long-term financial commitments that are in substance like borrowing and cannot bypass parliamentary control or ministerial oversight. The judgment reinforced that financial accountability and central government oversight are not optional. They are legal requirements. And therefore, I want to caution the public servants administrating over this arrangement at settlements that this arrangement based on the advice, suggests requires some level of parliamentary oversight, cabinet approval, as per the Minister of Finance, and therefore I am cautioning public servants to be so forewarned, be so guided, because this administration is about on their final days. And while we know Tobagonians are waiting to exhale and can't wait to get rid of them, please do not allow yourself to be collateral damage. And with those few words, I want to thank each and everyone for your time. I hope the issues raised, you all will pay close attention to them. This administration is very good at optics, very good at PR. We must give them that. Very early we heard them talking about shaping narratives. They are very good. They have mastered the art of shaping narratives. But underneath the surface, I want you as Tobagonians to really look deeply at the issues and ask yourself, especially with respect to that road down at Tobago local road, moving from $65 million, now doubling to over $120 million, whether in that arrangement to move from Cove to the face, just to the mouth of Apex, whether we have gotten value for money. I thank you. Any questions I will take at this time. So with no questions, I want to thank you and continue to love our country, continue to celebrate this 63rd year of independence, and may God continue to bless us all. Thank you.